Cool. Should we go for the divide kind of thing as well? I think we touched it so many times, but still, I think it's interesting to just hear Fredrik's thoughts about that. Unless you have some other topic you'd like to.
No, we talked quite a bit about how we understand the AI divide, and then we have on this show framed it quite a bit around that we understand the world right now, that there's actually a few tech giants who really is leaps and bounds in maturity of having industrialized, operationalized AI compared to the rest of the world. And we've been sort of exploring what that means from a societal perspective, both how we can do to fix it, but if it's a problem or not. What's your views on this? Have you thought about?
I don't think it's a problem. I think it's not everyone could be Usain Bolt. I mean, there's some athletes out there doing good things. It's the long tail of everyday exercise people, motionärer, that makes a difference, perhaps. So, again, I don't think there's a contradiction between. Perhaps not a divide. There's someone leading the way and showing what's possible, and some people want to follow, and maybe not all should follow. Maybe not all should be Usain Bolt. But
do you think there is a difference in how the tech giants, the big ones, in US and China, are moving and using data and AI in a way that is accelerating a lot, and the rest of the company are trying to keep up, but the speed, the derivatives, so to speak, of how fast they're able to make money from it, for one, or simply build products that are really useful and good, is accelerating faster for these few selected companies compared to the rest of the world.
Yes, I think so. I mean, they have like a 20-year head start.
Yeah, and so I want to disagree with you a little bit here, because
That's good.
I think I'm not. It's great that someone is Usain Bolt. That's not really the problem, that someone is Usain Bolt. The problem is when you have too big inequalities in a society.
Yes.
So basically, the real problem is that the tail now is too far away, and
you're speaking about companies and their competencies with respect to AI.
Yes.
In relation to the big ones.
Yes. Exactly like that. And why I sort of even why I want to sit here and talk about this and spend every week on this is because I think it's a societal concern to the point where we will have disruption from because they're when they're so far ahead on AI and it's a general purpose type technology. Stepwise, they apply that fundamental platform and AI operationalization know-how. They have so much money, so they can easily buy themselves into a new domain. And then when they're in this domain, they are in such a position where basically the general purpose AI can simply be, for them easier. And my thinking has been going down the last couple of years, has been like, from a societal point of view, all this old job losses or all that, I think it will be looking very different if the normal Swedish companies is disrupting themselves, reinventing themselves, rather than it's an outside force from 10 companies in the world. This is the concern I'm thinking about. So I'm not saying they are not the problem. It's us not picking up the ball that is the real problem.
So the delta, the difference is
the delta, the inequality.
Yes.
You have the riches and you have the haves and have-nots.
Yes, and I think that might be a problem. It depends on what hat I'm wearing. If it's from a scientific point of view, I want to see someone spearheading and doing great cool stuff. If it's from like a citizen's point of view, when I want everyone to have the same opportunity, it could be really bad. And given that the net worth of the biggest companies are like in the range of countries, they are players in their own rights. And you could see that, for instance, Facebook and Australia and the media laws last week. But you can also see it in the way that the US, for instance, is trying to regulate the big tech companies now. There are lots and different attempts to break things up. And I just one of the things is that Google.
Can you just mention? I think the Australian kind of fight against Facebook, etc., is very interesting. Can you just elaborate a bit more what that was?
So what as far as I understand, it's essentially that the Australian government wants the big tech giants to pay taxes or to pay money if they link to news produced by other entities like news outlets. Yeah. And there's pros and there's cons.
And what did Facebook do?
Facebook said, no, we're not going to do it, and it sort of shut everything down on their own platform.
So they didn't even link to any Australian news sites anymore, and they lost like huge amount of traffic because of it, right?
So and then it took a couple of days, and then the Australian government reverted this decision. So there are different things at play here, and one thing that I'm really, really worried about is that if the primary or like quality quotation marks quality now news outlets are gone, there will still be low quality or non-quality news outlets on Facebook, which people might not be aware of, and they still get their news and their filter bubbles all over again. So this is not a good development.
It's a difficult situation, but let us try to end on a more positive note. I think and even if we have this kind of big tech giants, and if we try to compare, for example, Sweden compared to US or other European countries or even China, I would argue, and I would like to hear what you think about this, is that even though we have tech giants, if you take the average company in US or the average company in China or the average company in Europe even, and compare it to the average company in Sweden, I would argue that an average company in Sweden is rather well ahead compared to other continents when it comes to data readiness, technology level, and ability to use AI compared to most others. Would you agree?
I only have anecdotal evidence of this, a few data points. I was in a call this week with a small company in the south of Sweden that manufactures steel things. And we were working there with data, and they talked about their business system and everything. And he said he kept excusing himself and saying that, well, we're not really good at this. And the only thing I heard was that he had this tremendous machine where he inputted everything, and they was like agile and working on the floor and doing this, steel things. And so, from these kinds of stories I've heard, I would agree with you and say that people think they're not, adepts because they see the flaws in their own processes, but they are quite good at what they're doing.
I would certainly think so. And compared to a lot of other European and especially US and China companies, I think we are actually on a rather good position in Sweden. But then we have the tech giant. But that's a different.
But as the last topic now, if you allow ourselves to run over 1 or 2 minutes, where do you think from the anecdotal or the cross section of companies and public sector you meet and stuff like that? Where do you think they should put their focus and emphasis to take, we say that we're not as bad as we think, but we have a long way forward. Where would the most bang for buck go if they invested in like this? I mean, you hinted, care about your data is one example, right?
Yeah, that's one example. But I would actually go a step further and say that you should do an inventory right now of your pain points in your business, in your processes. Where do you spend the most time? Where's the most errors? And then try to see, is there a data-driven approach to actually mitigate this in a way? And then go to data and then see what kind of technology.
So really start thinking about lining up your core waste or problem areas and see which ones of them can be translated into a data-driven approach.
And not really... not really mapping out what people say they're working, how they're working, but actually looking at the ways they are working.
Getting then also your real metrics maybe on some of these.
Yes.
This is one thing. I think we have too few hardcore sharp metrics on some of these topics.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to be customer relevant.
Yes.
What's your metric? I don't have one.
Okay.
Low churn rate.
But it's a good, I think that's a very good, simple advice. Inventory your problems, and that could be solved by data.